Welcome to the Boneyard with Steve Robertson. As always, I am your good friend and host, Steve Robertson, here on the Hump Day edition of the Yard. Hope things are well with you. It's busy. It's busy around here. Should have everything finished up for the Big Rock Vegas show on September 30th this week. Only a couple more things left to do. Ticketing, that's one thing we're working through, just waiting on somebody to get that set up. But we hope to have tickets on sale Friday. We hope. If it doesn't happen Friday, don't panic. It's just a matter of kind of getting some things set up. And so it's a little bit complicated at times. But my hope is we'll have an announcement on that in the next today or tomorrow as far as ticketing goes. So I'd like to have them on sale by Friday. And so went and met with some people yesterday to try to get that resolved. And so we'll have some information for you on that sooner rather than later. But things are going well. Rock Vegas, of course, September 30th. We'll have Mississippi bands, Four-Way Stop and Twist, supporting Lily and Axe, legendary band from the Southeast. They're actually over in the UK right now, playing a week of dates over there. Be pretty cool. Playing some pubs, some historic venues over there. Then they'll come back, they'll get settled in, and then we'll see them in about 5 weeks' time. A lot of football is going to be played between now and then. We're going to talk about some upcoming football on today's show. I want to thank everybody that's been a part of making this show a reality. We're nearly done. Last I got left to do is get the banners taken care of. It'll also provide some advertising for our sponsors, and then pay Lily and Axe the rest of their fee. And that's it. Down to it. From start to finish, we're 10 days into this thing, and we're nearly done. And I went down to the venue, spent some time with Hobie at his place. There's some things they're doing there, kind of in preparation of the show, and got them connected with all Lily and Axe's PA people and staging people, and so there'll be some updates we'll provide as we get a little bit closer. But going to be a great night. I hope you guys can come out and attend. Important to understand, too, your ticket price, all of the ticket money you spend goes directly towards Mississippi State's NIL efforts. And so it's important to kind of understand that right out of the gate. You're going to get a great night of rock and roll, and also do something for the betterment of Mississippi State's student athletes. So be looking for more information as we go. Kind of getting there with all the little parameters as far as logos and getting our shirts settled and things like that. And ordered the VIP passes last night. They'll be here in a few days. We've already got our bracelets in, those entrance bracelets that people put on you when you go to a show. We got all that stuff done. There's a lot to it, man. I'm not going to lie. Your boy went to bed early last night. Had my son Ian's 17th birthday celebration. Came home, scrolling through my phone, felt myself drifting off. I didn't even watch TV, man. I just turned the light out, went on to bed. But got to get all this stuff done this week because we're going to be into the season next week, and I'm not going to have time to commit to it. So kind of running myself ragged a little bit, but I think it'll all be worth it. In the end. Really excited about this show, and have heard from a lot of people too. A lot of people, that were very integral in the Mississippi rock scene years ago, people that were part of putting shows together, people that promoted bands and things like that are really encouraging us because they're happy with what's happening, with what we're doing, kind of trying to revitalize the Mississippi rock scene. I hope that you'll support us in that endeavor. Come to the show. We're going to have other shows too. Going to have other shows. I already got a lot of interest around the state for people saying, hey, we would like to do something like that too. So there are some things that we'll do. Of course, there's only so many hours in the day, so I can't commit a lot of time to this. But, we're thinking, maybe a couple times a year, maybe once a quarter, we can put a show together. And, if it becomes something bigger than that, then it does. But we've heard from some people too that, that have been in some bands that you guys think are important. That said, hey, we might be willing to kind of put a reunion show together if you're interested in something like that. But at the end of the day, it's not just a nostalgia type thing. We're trying to kind of push forward and do what we can to kind of cultivate the rock scene here in the state of Mississippi. I know many of you were around during those days, and you remember those days fondly. I remember talking to the young guys in Twist last week, and I was telling them some history of Lily and Axe about how when we were teenagers, we used our fake IDs to get into the creek to go watch them play. We didn't even care about drinking a cold beer. We just wanted to watch the show, kind of be around the culture, kind of be around our friends and our family, and enjoy a great rock show. And Wiley Carter says, you know what? That's what we want to bring back. We want people getting fake IDs and sneaking into shows and things like that because they love rock and roll music. And so there is a hunger out there. A lot of these young people just need an opportunity. And you would think, well, the music scene is so easy nowadays. You can go record a song and put it up on iTunes, right? But these young people need exposure. These bands need a chance to play in front of a crowd, and that's what we're going to bring to Hobie's on September 30th. We're going to bring a great crowd, and again, limited capacity, so tickets are going to go quickly. And it's important to understand that too. If you're thinking, okay, well, I'll just wait around, maybe go the day of the show, there's not going to be any ticketing at the door. You're going to have to buy your tickets online. We'll provide that link on all my social media, and we'll have a lot of things out there for you guys to be able to go get your tickets. So kind of understand that right out of the gate. I've already got people right now like, hey, Steve, you got me. No, I don't have you. I don't have you. So you're going to need to buy a ticket because this is not my show. Even though I'm the person kind of organizing all this, I will not profit from it, and I'm not going to control the facilitation of tickets. So you're going to have to buy a ticket. You're not going to be able to show up that day and say, hey, I'm a friend of Steve's, because everybody's a friend of Steve's. I just can't get you into a show that's there the purpose of the show is to raise money. And so I need inventory, as Charlie says. I need people that are going to be there to buy beer, and people that are going to buy shirts, and people that are going to contribute to the cause. And so I appreciate everybody's interest and look forward to that. Once this week is done, even though I feel great about it, once I get the rest of Lillian's fee paid, and I'll do that Friday, and we get these banners on order, we get this ticketing set up, then there's really nothing left to do. Then we're just kind of waiting, kind of letting everybody prepare. Of course, as I mentioned, Hobie's got some things we got to do down there, but it'll be great. It's going to be a great night, a historic venue. A lot of big bands have played the old State Palace Theater. And I had somebody else tell me, it's like, hey, well, this is going to be upstairs. No, it's not upstairs. It's going to be downstairs in the main venue. So it's going to be a great night. Come be a part of that the night before the Texas A&M game. And again, remember now, be looking for tickets. I will announce it and give you guys a little advance notice. But once tickets are on sale, they're going to go quickly. So understand that. All right, let's thank our friends at Bulldog Burger Company. I love Bulldog Burger Company. I love them an awful lot. I love them, I think, before they love me. It is a love affair in which I am happy to participate. I love a good restaurant quality hamburger. Theirs are great. I don't know that there's any place I'd rather eat a hamburger than Bulldog Burger Company. It's one of the fine delicacies in life, right? Treat yourself today to the fine cuisine at Bulldog Burger Company. They're 3 great locations to serve you. University Drive here in Start Vegas. They got that brand new great patio area. Be sure and check that out. And, of course, Gloucester Street there in Tupelo. Lake Harbor Drive in the Ridge and Flowood area. Go by, have the spring rolls as your appetizer. They will make you and everybody around you better looking. We all need more of that, right? As we age, we need kind of that fountain of youth meal. Have those spring rolls. They'll contribute to that. If you hadn't been in lately, you should. They've updated the menu a little bit, some new items on there. Go by, have your old favorites, perhaps try something new. Bulldog Burger Company, the place where people go to meet. MEAT. All right, we're going to have some college football in our lives here in a couple days. How about that? Did you realize it? It's kind of sneaking up on you, maybe. The SEC, we're going to have our first SEC game August 27th. Today is August 24th. So this Saturday, we're going to see Vanderbilt play at Hawaii. That's going to be a 9:30 Central start. It'll be broadcast on the CBS Sports Network. That's part of our group, part of CBS Sports. We're with CBS Interactive. And so Vanderbilt at Hawaii. And I understand Vanderbilt, like it's been down there for a couple days to kind of acclimate to the territory out there. It's a different deal. So let's kind of look at some of these odds, I guess we can. Kind of look and see what week 0 looks like. And then we're only going to talk about SEC teams. But you look at the latest lines, it looks like Vanderbilt is favored in this thing. And it's interesting, too. The lines with this are kind of all over the place. They really are. I guess it opened at -1. Vanderbilt favored by a point. And, now some books have it from, 8.5 to 7.5, so right around 8. So Vanderbilt's favored to win this game by a touchdown or more. I don't know. I mean, can you have any confidence in Vanderbilt? And what a great trip to be able to go to Hawaii. But that's going to take place, again, that's Saturday night, 9:30 Central. Should be able to find that regardless of your TV provider there. Be sure and check that game out. It'll be the first SEC game of the year. Going to be some other games that day. I guess our first game will be at 11 a.m.? I think that's right. 11 a.m.? Maybe so. Yeah, 11 a.m. Austin Peay and the Western Kentucky Hilltoppers. Pretty big Power 5 game that day, too. Northwestern versus Nebraska. Scott Frost, of course, coaching for his job, not just his alma mater. It's a big year for him. Looks like he's facing a loss early on. But, all right, let's move forward here, too. Our next SEC game will happen September the 1st. September the 1st. I need to get a calendar out here. Goodness gracious. Let me get my calendar out here so I don't tell you the wrong days. Yeah, so the 27th is the Saturday, and then Labor Day, of course, follows on the 5th. That's after us. But September the 1st is going to be a Thursday night game, and Ball State is going to be at Tennessee. That's a 6 p.m. 6 p.m. kick on the SEC Network. Ball State at Tennessee. I like this Tennessee team. We talked about them on the last show. We'll kind of see how things progress with them. But the reality of it is I think this Tennessee team is going to be a lot better than people expect. Tennessee favored by 30+ in this game. Ball State might do well within their league, but I think this Tennessee team will smash them. I think that's what you guys are anticipating as well. I saw Josh Pate put out his predictions too. I agree with most of them. A couple of them I disagree with, but like me, Josh has Late Kick. He's a little radio show and podcast for 247. Does a great job with that. He likes this Tennessee team too. Tennessee not even a preseason top 25. I think that is an omission that will look a little silly in hindsight. Not the only game that day involving an SEC team. Louisiana Tech will be at Missouri. That's going to be on ESPNU. That's a 7 o'clock Central kick. That could be an entertaining game. Vanderbilt in Hawaii may be interesting in its ineptitude, and I think Tennessee will flash some muscle. But this Louisiana Tech-Missouri game could be awfully interesting. I'm eager to see what Tech looks like. Of course, Tech kind of went all in on the portal last year. Didn't quite work out. Missouri is favored by 18.5, and some books have it just above 20. So they're expecting Mizzou to be much better. I just think with that Tiger defense, how much better can they be year over year in week one? No clue what Louisiana Tech's going to have. But again, they kind of went all in last year on the portal, and now a lot of those guys are gone. So Missouri favored to win big there. And, of course, the first 3 ball games, you expect, in a non-conference schedule, an SEC team should be favored to win. But Louisiana Tech could make it interesting. I'm not a betting man, but if I was, I might even take Tech in the points because with that Missouri defense and all that they've lost last year, I don't know if you look at that and see if they have 3 touchdown favorite. I don't know. I don't see this like I do that Ball State-Tennessee game. I don't think there's any question. All right, so we get to September 3rd, and that's the day we play. And this is when everybody else in the league is going to play. Everybody else in the league is going to get together, play these games. Sam Houston State will be your 11 a.m. SEC Network game at Texas A&M. Should be a blowout. I mean, if Texas A&M can't blow those guys out, it could make for a very interesting year out in College Station. Sam Houston, there's no line on this game. Texas A&M should win this game handily. I don't know what you know about Sam Houston State. They've got a pretty good, decent baseball program. Matt Dagg's coach there. Pretty awesome. Awesome coach there. Sam Houston State Bearcats. Let's take a quick look at the Bearcats, just for the fun of it, right? Let's just take a look and see what happened to those guys last year. It's like when you Google Sam Houston State, one of the first questions that pops up is Sam Houston State a D1 school? That says an awful lot, doesn't it? So, no, we don't expect those guys to be involved. But they were 11-1 last year. Hey, good for them. Good for the Bearcats. They're 11-1 last year. Made it to the quarterfinals of the FCS playoffs. So, Not a bad FCS team by any stretch, but it'll be interesting to see, from an athlete standpoint, if they can hang with the Aggies for a half. Big game that night, or that afternoon, excuse me. Oregon at Georgia. Number 11, Oregon at Georgia. That is a 2:30 ABC kick, Central Time. That's going to be another one of those games, too, that I think there'll be a lot of eyeballs on the defending national champions against a team that's been very good in the Pac-12 last couple of years. I don't know if we can continue to call it the Pac-12, though. Maybe I'm wrong. But that's going to be an awfully interesting game. From an early week standpoint, you don't expect to see those caliber of games at the very beginning. But that's what we're going to get. And of course, Oregon with a new offensive coordinator. As Moorhead left Eugene to go to be the head coach for the Akron Zips. And we wish Joe the best, man. Traded some messages with Joe here a couple weeks ago. And Joe just, a great man. He just didn't win enough. We just had some issues here. I don't think any less of Joe as a person or a coach, and he had a couple of good years there at Oregon offensively. But Oregon's got their hands full with the defending national champion Georgia Bulldogs. They returned a lot of their roster. We previewed them here a couple of weeks ago. Oregon is a 14.5-point dog, opened at 14.5, and now it's risen to 17.5. I like Georgia in this game. I think Oregon's a little bit overvalued. I think you guys probably would agree. As we get a little closer, we'll make these picks again, but I'm just kind of going off the current lines here. Georgia, a huge favorite here, basically a 3-score favorite in this game. And you wouldn't expect that this early in the season between, I guess a peripheral top 10 team in Oregon. They got to go between the hedges, and that's tough to do. All right, Cincinnati at Arkansas. This is a very intriguing game. This will happen at the same time. This is a 2:30 kick on ESPN. Cincinnati, of course, last year, a team that was outstanding. What is it with all the Bearcats this year? Cincinnati Bearcats had a big year last year, and everybody keeps expecting Fickell to leave every single year. He's mentioned in connection with these big games and these big jobs, and I was told when I was doing the search for our job, when we hired Mike Leach, people were telling me that, that his wife, he and his wife both are devout Catholics, and it's very important to that family that their kids go to Catholic school. And so a great Catholic school system was a big part of the equation. And so they said, you know what? He's not going to leave Cincinnati for Starkville. Makes sense. Bearcats 13-1 last year. People forget they went undefeated in the regular season and then lost to Alabama in the Cotton Bowl. And you felt like Cincinnati wouldn't be able to match up athletically in that game. They didn't. But a great year for them. And you start looking at what Fickell has done there. If I'm Arkansas, I'm nervous, man. I mean, I am. And listen, I get it. It's all kind of works in cycles. Year before, 9-1. In 2020, they go 9-1. Lost 2 games the last 2 years combined. That's an impressive stretch. The year before that, 11-3. So good on Sam Pittman and the Arkansas Razorbacks for scheduling a team the caliber of Cincinnati. Cincinnati preseason top 25 at number 23. The Razorbacks opened as an 8-point favorite. It's now down to around 6.5, depending on what book you utilize there. So now it's under a touchdown. But this could be awfully interesting. There's some intrigue with this one. Now, of course, it doesn't impact Arkansas in the rankings, but or in the standings of the SEC. But Arkansas at home with a run-first scheme, and Cincinnati lost a good bit from last year. You got to like the Razorbacks here. But again, credit to both programs, and maybe Cincinnati has more to gain by playing Arkansas. But I think it's important to kind of tip the cap here and say, you know what? Hey, good on you guys for getting together and playing a game like this. All right, later that afternoon, 3 p.m. kickoff on the SEC Network, Troy and Oxford against the Ole Miss Rebels. Now, I don't think anybody expects this to be a game. I think maybe some Bulldog fans will watch it because we're just interested to see how this quarterback play is going to work out at Ole Miss. A lot of people have said privately that, this quarterback battle between Luke Altmaier and Dart has actually been really competitive. And hey, credit to Luke, man, for going up there and competing. Dart, of course, a very highly heralded recruit. And Luke was, too, in his own right, too. But a lot of people were kind of conceding this job to Dart But I understand that Luke's went up there and really played hard and has really represented himself well and made this kind of interesting. So do you see them both in week one? I think, with all this NIL stuff and this craziness that's going on in the portal, I think you have to start Dart. But I just think from a talent standpoint, Ole Miss should win this game handily. It opened as a 21-point line. It's risen to 22, 22 and a half. I don't think Ole Miss should have any trouble covering this. And if they do, they're in trouble, right? I mean, it's like you look at this cakewalk of a first-half schedule, they can ill afford to drop a game because the back half is absolutely loaded. And, again, I've got them losing the last 5. And so you can ill afford to drop a game to a non-conference opponent if you're Ole Miss. But they should not have any issue. They shouldn't have any issue with this. All right, so Utah at Florida. I've told you guys before, I like Utah in this game. I think Utah, that's a 6 p.m. kickoff on ESPN. Utah's a top 10 team. Florida's not. First game, new schemes, new coach. Even though it's in the swamp, I really like Utah in this game. And maybe you disagree, but I think the Utah team last year was capable of playing with probably everybody but Georgia and Alabama. Had a chance to watch them a couple times. Wide receiver play is really, really good. Offensively, they're really good. I'm looking up the line here for you right now, kind of scrolling through. A lot of traction that day. So it opens as Florida as a 1-point dog. And now Utah is the favorite. Excuse me. Yeah, Utah was the favorite. Excuse me. Wrong again. Florida opened up as a 1-point favorite. It is now a 2.5-point line in favor of Utah. So I apologize for that. I like Utah to win. I think this game could actually get out of hand. And when I say out of hand, I think Utah could win this thing by a couple scores. I don't think it's a blowout game. And I certainly have a tough time picking Florida in week one with all the moving parts to a new scheme against a Power 5 top 10 opponent. So I don't think the Billy Napier era gets off on the right foot. I could be wrong. Billy runs a very, very, very effective offensive scheme. I just think when you look at what Utah's bringing back and the momentum they have as a program right now, everything favors Utah. Yeah, it's a toss-up and you generally favor the home team, but again, week one, it could be a fire drill. It absolutely could. It could be an absolute fire drill. But I like Utah to win the game. I think Utah covers easily. Miami of Ohio will kick off around that same time. They'll be at Kentucky. I don't think there's anybody out there that is expecting any kind of upsets here. I'm kind of scrolling through here trying to find your line. But, Kentucky, some people say I'm a Kentucky hater. I think I'm a Kentucky realist. Maybe I'm wrong, but that's how I feel. I think Kentucky in many respects is Mississippi State. They just happen to benefit from playing in the East. I think we're comparable in many respects as a program, but I think most years I would favor Mississippi State. I'm also a homer. I think State's a better program than Kentucky. And he said, but they've had a couple 10-win seasons. Yeah, but when's the last time they had to march into Tuscaloosa or Tiger Stadium on a regular basis? I think they're a comparable program to Mississippi State, a step behind Mississippi State, and they benefit from playing in the weaker division. The line opened at 19.5 in favor of Kentucky. It's down to 17.5, 18. Kentucky should win this game handily, and then we'll have to deal with all this, hype again. I think Kentucky's a good program. I don't think they're great. I think there's some people in the media that would love for them to be great. All right, Mercer at Auburn. Brian Harsin better win this game. My gosh, man. It's like people are like, well, do you think he survives? No, I don't think he survives. And he's picked last in the West for a reason. They lost a ton to the portal. They're going to match up against Mercer. And, you say, well, Steve, athletically, Auburn should always beat Mercer. They should, They should have lost their FCS game last year too, though. So you begin to kind of dial this thing up, and it's like, if you're an Auburn fan, you're almost just kind of holding your breath. And it's like, well, we should be able to come out here and just steamroll them. And you're right. You should. But will they? I think Auburn wins this game, but, the reality of it is even if they win and they don't look cute doing it, if they go out there and just stumble and stumble and stumble and, they have to, pick off a pass late and eke out of there with a win, I think that's going to be a harbinger of things to come. I think we could probably all agree with that. Auburn absolutely cannot struggle with Mercer. I don't think they will. But if they do, man, the pitchforks are going to be out early. I don't think there's any question about it. There are going to be a lot of Auburn people that are going to be like, well, here we go. Let's go ahead and kind of mount up the posse here because we're going to be making a coaching change. And again, I'm told that there are some very prominent Auburn donors that are just not contributing to NIL because they don't believe in the program. They don't believe in the direction of the program. There is no line on this game, too. So Auburn should win going away. If they don't, go ahead and expect some drama. Elon will play Vanderbilt. Vanderbilt's going to get 2 games in very, very quickly, as you guys are well aware. Sometimes I confuse Elon with the University of Phoenix. I know Elon's had some good baseball programs over the years, but that'll be awfully interesting too. Vanderbilt, looking at the odds makers, Vanderbilt should get out of the gate 2-0. And that might be it. I still think they lose to Hawaii, but we'll kind of see how that kind of rolls out there. But Vanderbilt should get off to a good start against Elon. I mean, why wouldn't they? I mean, it's no disrespect to the fine folks at Elon, but you could probably pull 11 kids out of the stands in an SEC venue and probably be able to compete at a comparable level against an SEC team. Utah State's at Alabama. I don't think anybody in the world is projecting Utah State to be able to stay with them. But let's be fair to Utah State too. They're a team that has done some things at times that I guess are decent. I think you look at them and you say, well, okay, not too bad. They're in the shadow of a program like Utah, but Utah State just kind of flies under the radar over there. And every once in a while you look up and it seems like they're in a ball game that maybe they shouldn't be. But the reality of it is you got to be able to close out games. You got to be able to make things happen. And some of these websites, these university websites, it's like they're just trying to trick me. It's like, oh, here, click our ad. Oh, you don't want to click our ad? Okay, we'll make you jump there. Utah State 11-3 last year. Did you know that? Yeah, I would say the casual fan didn't know that. 11-3 last year. So they'll come out wanting to size up Alabama, and that'll be cute for a while. I don't think there's any question that Alabama should win that game. But, don't be surprised if Utah State makes it a game for a half. Right? I just think Alabama has recruited at such a level that it doesn't really matter who you line up. That game in the third quarter, there probably is going to be some separation. I don't think there's any question about that. Trying to find the line here. I wish that, maybe you guys can help me. Some of you guys that are regular gamblers. It's like, can I just go toggle and sort by SEC teams? Do I have to go through and just dig through all this stuff? Some of it just doesn't make any sense. And you would have to think there's got to be a line out there, Utah State versus Alabama. Okay, there it is, 39 points. 39 points. Yeah, so I guess it opened at 38.5, and it's swelled to 39. It's awfully tempting, right? To think, will Alabama beat them 56-0? That would be my luck, right? Like if they're favored by 39 and I pick them, Nick Saban would win by 40, But that should be an easy game, for Alabama. And in Memphis, of course, at Mississippi State, we're all well aware of this game, right? Kind of paying attention, getting excited about that game. And what's interesting is what's amazing to me is when I talk to other people in the media, they're kind of amazed by the spread in this game. And I don't profess to know everything about college sports, but I begin to ask myself, why wouldn't this spread be big? Memphis won last year on a fluke. Memphis doesn't return a ton. They went and worked the portal really hard, but so did Mississippi State. But it's like Mississippi State's one of the most experienced teams in the Southeastern Conference. Why wouldn't State playing at home against a G5 team with less experience? Why wouldn't State be a considerable favorite in that game? And people are like, wow, I don't understand. Oh, well, What is it you're really saying? Are you saying you expect Mississippi State to be poor? I think State's going to win this game handily. Maybe I am in the minority. I think State, number one, State let Memphis off the hook last year. We had a chance after that Emmanuel Forbes interception in the third quarter to go up 3 scores. And I feel like if you do that, the game is over. I think most people probably would agree with that. This game opened, State opened as an 8-point favorite. It is now 16.5 to 15.5. Opened at 8. It has now exploded. It's doubled. And people are like, I don't understand. Mississippi State's a good football team. How about that? Memphis is not. Memphis is an average team. Mississippi State's playing at home. State's got the revenge factor after that fluke nonsense cockamamie crap they put on us last year. State's going to win this game. State's going to cover. Maybe you disagree, and I'm okay with that too. I am perfectly okay with you being wrong. I don't want to, and I'll be honest with you, if we limp out of that game, my expectations about the season may change a little bit. I think we're an 8-4 team. I think we get Memphis, and I'm not saying we go up there and hang 70 on them, but I think we play that game really well. Georgia State is at South Carolina, the barn burner. South Carolina also an experienced team this year, and then they bring in Spencer Rattler. You may have seen that yesterday, and I actually think their numbers are wrong. I actually think State's more experienced. I'd have to go back and do the math myself. But Mississippi State and South Carolina, according to a graphic that made the rounds on social media yesterday, returned the most starters of anybody in the SEC. So we're not a young team, all right? So don't listen to that. We're not a young team. South Carolina, it opens as an 11-point favorite. It goes to 13.5. You like South Carolina at home. Georgia State, what's interesting, they won some games that kind of made some people excited, I guess. I always thought Georgia State was just, for a long time, they were just kind of another team, right? You know what I'm saying? It's like you never thought about them as a team you needed to worry about. I mean, are we being fair here? You just never really worried about them. And then like last year, they nearly beat Auburn. At Auburn. I know it wasn't a great Auburn team, but Georgia State should have won the game. I think Georgia State got cheated out of the game. They called that pass complete. The ball clearly hit the ground. They review it. And the bum at the SEC office, who was at the control center, basically gave that to Auburn. Auburn comes back, takes a lead, and then Georgia State throws a pick 6. And everybody on the plane celebrates. As bad as that season was for Auburn, it should have been worse because replay failed them. Absolutely failed them. And they still finished 8-5 on the year. They beat Ball State 51-20 in the Camellia Bowl down in Montgomery. Finished the year on a 4-game winning streak. I don't know what they return. They might make this thing interesting for a while. But, with Spencer Rattler in that offense, South Carolina should win this game, but don't be surprised if Georgia State doesn't keep it close. All right, final game, and that'll actually be on a Sunday, September the 4th on week 1. It'll be ABC, a 6:30 p.m. kickoff. Florida State and LSU. Florida State and LSU, two teams that struggled last year. LSU finished 6-6 in the regular season, lost their bowl game. Florida State goes 5-7, misses out on a bowl game. So when that contract was signed, somebody's like, dude, we got Florida State and LSU. And now it's like, oh, we got Florida State and LSU. LSU opens as a 4-point favorite. It's now down to 3.5, depending on who you look at. Does anybody know what these teams are going to look like? I mean, let's be fair about that. Do we really know how that game's going to look? And of course, it's not a home game for either team, so it's a toss-up in a neutral site. The LSU people will turn out. I'll be honest with you. I think the LSU fan base is more excited about their program because they go out there and pull the boss move and they go get Brian Kelly away from Notre Dame. And that's what they do at LSU. That's what Scott does. He goes out and makes splash hires. He shows their base. We're committed to winning. We're going to go out and do big things. So they go out and get Brian Kelly. So I think the LSU people are probably more excited about their season, while there are some Florida State fans that are hoping for a coaching change. Florida State's had, 4 losing seasons in a row? I think we've talked about that before. It's like these Florida State people that were so disillusioned about why Chris Parson would consider Mississippi State. Well, he got connections here too, but also too, what is Florida State? They're not what they once were. And if you're Mike Norvell, again, you finished 5-7 last year, and then you lose to Florida, a really bad Florida team with an interim coach. So Mike Norvell enters year 3, went 3-6 in 2020. Maybe you can't count that against. Some people do now, the ones they're making their case. And you're 5-7 last year. And so, five consecutive losing seasons. 5 straight. 5 straight. And that actually goes back. No, I'm wrong about that too. Yeah, it's 5 straight. Jimbo's last year, of course, was a losing season. Willie Taggart went 5-7, 4-5, then Mike Norvell 3-6, 5-7. And this is going to be one of those games too. If LSU loses, I don't think their people jump off the bandwagon. Florida State loses, it's going to be like if Harsin struggles against Mercer. Yeah, because especially if LSU embarrasses them. And again, there's a lot of moving parts to every bit of this. I think everybody's well aware of that. New coach, new personnel, could be some interesting results here. But, quickly kind of looking at Florida State, they're going to play the week before against Duquesne's. So they'll work some things out. And then they get LSU. They're at Louisville. They host Boston College, host Wake Forest, at NC State, host Clemson, host Georgia Tech, at Miami, at Syracuse. Then they host UL Lafayette. And then, of course, Florida. And you start looking at this and you start, counting sure wins. Outside of Duquesne's, is there a sure win on this schedule? Maybe Georgia Tech. Outside of that, there's not a single game you look at and say, Florida State will definitely win that game. And if that's not a measure of how far the program has fallen, I don't know what does. I don't know what is. But that's the first week, and of course, Vanderbilt's going to play twice to open the season. So good for them. They're going to play August 27th and then play again the next week. So could get off to a fast start. You should, Clark Lee. But that's kind of how things look today. As we get into next week on Friday, we'll kind of break some things down. But the reality of it is college football season's here. And we're 3 days away from watching college football. I'm excited. You should be as well. All right, time for today's top 10 list. We're going to go back to the beginning of heavy metal today, man. I cannot believe we haven't done this. As always, the top 10 list brought to you by closewithblair.com. That's CLOSE with Blair, BLAIR. Close is in close your loan with Blair Chandler. Blair is a mortgage professional. A lot of people out there competing for your business, and everybody started somewhere. But you know what? If you're going to trust something as important as your home to an individual, do it with somebody that's got 21 years of experience. A guy that's been top 1% close ratio in the country in back-to-back years. Works for Fairway Mortgage, not some fly-by-night, some prime lender. The reality of it is Blair has been in business this long because Blair knows how to do business. It doesn't matter if you're an atypical borrower with a non-conforming property. He has seen it all and done it all. If anybody can get it done, it's Blair Chandler. And say, you know what, Steve, I've got my hopes up before and it's just not worked out. You know what? Blair's a guy that kind of specializes in cases like that. So you may be just, ready to go. Maybe you're just thinking, hey, Steve, I'm looking to refinance, or I've got a, second mortgage I'd like to kind of absorb into one payment, or perhaps I want to consolidate some debt. Blair's a guy that can make it happen for you. His phone number, 601-500-2344. Again, 601-500-2344. And that's directly to him. You can call or text him and let him know you heard about him on the Boneyard. He'll even pay for your appraisal. How's that for an incentive, right? A lot of other people out there want your business, but this is the guys, you know what, I want it bad enough, I'll just pay for the appraisal. It's an amazing convenience for Boneyard listeners of all kinds. Again, that's closewithblair.com. Roy reminds me today, we have not done a top 10 Black Sabbath list. Now, we've done Ronnie James Dio, we've done Ozzy, but we've never done Black Sabbath. Now, I'm not going to do the Heaven and Hell era. That's when Ronnie James Dio, and of course there were the Dio disciples and things like that, and there were some other people that did things with Black Sabbath that maybe weren't true to the earlier days of Ozzy and Ronnie James Dio. So we're going to Ozzy years. We're going to the Ozzy Black Sabbath years. I've told you guys before, Black Sabbath, the true first heavy metal band. Their tuning, the music itself, very dark and ominous. The name itself, Black Sabbath. Just a lot to that. There was an aura around this band, and every true rock band today owes a debt of gratitude to Black Sabbath. So we're going to do our top 10 Black Sabbath songs today. And, of course, this is from the Ozzy era. Number 10, from Technical Ecstasy, the only song on the countdown from that list is Backstreet Kids. And you don't think that somebody involved with the Backstreet Boys kind of pirated off of that? Because there was nothing about the Backstreet Boys that made you think they were from the Backstreet. It's like, I remember who said, I guess it was Chris Rock, and said, if those are the Backstreet Boys, who's on the front street? Big Bird. This is a killer track, though, guys. If you're unfamiliar with it, I think it's the best track on the Technical Ecstasy album. I think that's important to kind of understand, too. There's a lot of these albums, too, that maybe weren't highly acclaimed, but have like some hidden gems in them. You Won't Change Me is another one on that album, but ours today is the Backstreet Kids. Top 10, number 10. Number 9, Children of the Grave. This is another one of those dark and ominous tunes that a lot of people kind of point to as maybe an underappreciated Black Sabbath classic. And there were a lot of songs, too, that didn't get played on the radio. What's interesting, too, and I was speaking to Steve Ross this earlier, Stephen Ross, contributor, Gene's page, and some songs have just kind of magically disappeared, from some of the streaming platforms. Like the whole album will be there, and then like with one or two exceptions, like NIB is not there on the Black Sabbath album. Fairies Wear Boots is not there. And so I don't know, it's like if we're just too sensitive for that. Listen, I believe in a free society in many respects, right? I mean, I believe in freedom, especially when it comes to art. And so it's like nobody's playing this stuff on the radio. It's like nobody's forcing you to listen to it. And so why can't it be there for those of us that want to listen to it? Again, I don't understand if it's a censorship thing or perhaps the licensing issue, but, nobody is playing NIB on the radio. Nobody's playing it in a store. You can go shop at your local shopping mall or shopping center or whatever, and you're not going to run into that song. The only people that listen to it are the people that actually have it on vinyl or CD or whatever. So it just seems silly to me. And again, I don't want to preach too much about this, but I believe in freedom of choice. I believe in freedom of art expression. And some people would say, well, I think that's offensive. Well, I think you're offensive. How about that? Can I remove you from iTunes too? Because that's what I think. I believe in freedom of thought. I believe in freedom of the press. I believe in freedom in art. And again, it's your choice. You don't have to listen to it. All right, so again, Children of the Grave. Number 8, great tune. Again, kind of overshadowed by some huge hits on that album. It's The Wizard. I love the harmonica part, and Ozzy actually plays it. And if you watch Jack and Ozzy's Rock and Roll Detour show, whatever, I hadn't watched it in a while, but they visit the Mississippi Delta, and he goes to a famous music store up there, and then he plays the harmonica part with the proprietor of the music store from The Wizard. Great tune, again, kind of overshadowed by the fact that it's on a legendary album. All right, the title track, number 7, from the album Sabbath, Bloody Sabbath. And some people are like, Steve, my gosh, it's not that serious. This album was banned in the United States for a while, and there was talk about an alternate cover because there was like this, this demon over supposedly this virgin or whatever, and so people lost their minds. And again, I submit to you, if you don't want to see that image, then don't buy the record. Life is full of choices, right? So the title track, Sabbath, Bloody Sabbath, again, dark, ominous. I think Tommy Iommi absolutely kills it on here. I love the vibe on this one. And I think that album is kind of hit or miss, but this is kind of a shining moment. Number 6 from Volume 4, and I think this is one of Ozzy's most underappreciated songs from his Black Sabbath career. It's the song Snowblind. I absolutely love it, and he uses a little more of his upper register, and you can tell that it's true. Like nowadays, it's like anybody can sing into a computer and sell millions of records, it seems. But You know, Sabbath recorded a lot of this stuff live in the studio. And I think when you hear Snowblind, I think you really see, even at a young age, the singer that Ozzy Osbourne was. Number 5, another song that gets played a lot, but not as much as the hits, and I dig it, maybe you do too. It's Sweet Leaf. And there's nothing sweet about the song. But Sweet Leaf is another rocker that, again, the riff is incredible. That deep, grinding bass line, great. All right, I think we could probably all agree the top 4. We may disagree on the order, and that's okay. But I think most of us would agree number 4 is the song Black Sabbath. So you've got the band Black Sabbath singing the song Black Sabbath on the album Black Sabbath. It makes it very, very easy to find, right? There are some iconic moments in music. This is one of them. This is one of those moments when this song came out. You know, they played what was called the Devil's Note, you know, because of how deep and dark it was and everything, and music began to change. Everything was kind of upbeat and peppy and poppy, and everybody loved everybody, and then all of a sudden these guys from England show up, and they're singing about Black Sabbath. And they had their bangs in their eyes, you know, so like, oh, what's wrong with these guys? All right, number 3, I can actually pull this off karaoke. Maybe many of you can. But it's War Pigs. And what's so interesting, too, is there was so much controversy about this song. And it's like, this is an anti-war anthem. But because Black Sabbath was singing it, you know, people tried to suggest there was more to it. And there was so many things, too, like even the, I can't remember which album it was. It may have been, maybe Masters of Reality. I can't remember. But there was an album, I can't remember if it was Paranoid. Yeah, maybe it was Masters of Reality. Anyway, that this lady who was depressed, she killed herself, and when they went in, they found that the Black Sabbath record was on the record player, and they wanted to blame Black Sabbath for it. It's like, what? It's like, God forbid that she actually be mentally ill, or God forbid that, you know, she may have reached the end of a rope. Let's find somebody to blame. It's crazy. But anyway, War Pigs, a lot of controversy about this song, and you know, it's about, hey, let's stop war because war is stupid. War kills people, innocent people. And so they're calling the warmongers war pigs. That's what the song is about. All right, number 2, and this is, again, a lot of debate. And you're probably, those of you that love Black Sabbath are curious which way I'm going to go here. Number 2, I'm going Iron Man. I'm going Iron Man number 1. A lot of people know this because of the introduction, and when they did it, everybody's like, oh, what's happening here? It's almost like this is a voice from the pits of hell, and it was really just some studio trick they did when he says, I am Iron Man. It's just this robotic type voice. It really wasn't that big a deal. But at the time, I guess it appeared revolutionary in the 70s. But Iron Man is a song that has lasted forever and a day. It is a timeless rock classic. But number 1 for me, and when I hear them play it live, whether it be on albums or whether it be on television, this is the one that always gets the crowd jumping. Always. While a lot of their stuff is slow and dark and ominous and kind of in your face, this is one that is a true rock and roll classic. Let's go for Paranoid. That's right. Number 1 is Paranoid off the Paranoid album, ironically enough, which was the second album. And what's interesting, too, when you go back and look at Sabbath, man, they pumped out like 5 albums in 3 years, which was unheard of at the time. And there were so many people, so many critics, and people were like, well, you know, I don't know. These guys are kind of a flash in the pan or whatever. And they kept just churning out platinum records. If I remember correctly from my research, I believe that Paranoid went gold its first month of release. And again, that's kind of on the strength of Black Sabbath, the initial album. The debut album was so different, people couldn't wait to get their hands on the next stuff. And that's the thing, too, about music. There are a lot of people out there that have a lot of talent that don't draw a crowd, that can't move a crowd. I talked about that, you know, seeing Twist over the weekend. I don't know a lyric to a single one of their songs, but I know the crowd responds to them. There are a lot of people out there that are incredibly talented, but they can't write. They can't write songs. And so it's like, hey, well, why does this person not have a bigger crowd? It's because they can't connect with their audience. Bands like Black Sabbath did. And a lot of it was the vibe. And a lot of it was rebellion. A lot of people are like, you know what, this is just different. I get people forcing this stuff down my throat. I'm going to go join the band of outcasts. And so Black Sabbath rose to power and birthed heavy metal. Every heavy metal master, and really the ones that aren't quite as skilled, everybody owes a lineage to Black Sabbath, the first heavy metal band of all time. So there you go. My take on the Black Sabbath catalog. And I'll be honest with you, I'm not going to give the disclaimer that your list may be wrong, because your list may be right. I think that I've got it right. But there are a lot of people this band is very special to. And there are songs that maybe have an emotional attachment. And so I'm not going to be, I'm always joking when I say it, but I'm not going to say, hey, you're wrong about this, because I think you could put together maybe another half dozen songs on here and have a case to have them in the top 10. But Black Sabbath is one of those bands we talk about, when things changed in music. Here about a year and a half ago, 2 years ago, I did the whole series at the request of one of our younger listeners who said, hey, Steve, can you do like a history of rock music? Top 10. Black Sabbath, one of the most significant bands in the history of rock and roll, without any question. So enjoy some Black Sabbath today and get your fist in the air. If you have ideas for the top 10 list, reach out to me or Roy. Better yet, it's better to go to Roy at Dogmatic67 on Twitter. That's DAWGMATIC 67. And you can also find him on Spotify. All of our lists are there. All right, next segment of the show brought to you by Campus Bookmart. You guys are familiar with them. If you're not, you should be. A Starkvillian institution. Serving a great fan base, providing the greatest Mississippi State merchandise available in the marketplace today. The Bully Shop has been completely renovated. It's now upstairs at Campus Bookmart. They're no longer in the textbook business, just selling Mississippi State merch. Be sure and go by and check them out when you're in town. If you can't make it to town to see their lovely and talented Susie and her smiling face and many others, visit them on the World Wide Web, courtesy of Al Gore's Internet, at campusbookmart.net. And being a loyal Boneyard listener, we'll give you a phrase that pays, and that is BSR. That gets you free shipping on all orders over $50. There's nothing better in life than something free. It's not a free lunch, but it could be, depending on your purchase, right? So use that at campusbookmart.net, promo code BSR, which stands for Beautiful Steve Robertson. Any order less than $50, absolutely incomplete. All right, today's SEC opponent preview, Mississippi State will play this team, is Texas A&M. We'll do Vanderbilt on Friday. Texas A&M, I think, a lot of people say, yeah, they got over the hump last year, but did they really? I mean, it was an 8-4 year. They beat Alabama but lost to Arkansas, Mississippi State, and Ole Miss in the same year. Kind of been, I guess kind of par for the course for Jimbo. They opened up with a 41-10 win over Kent State. Haynes King is lost for the season in a 10-7 win over Colorado. If I remember correctly, I want to say I picked Colorado to win that game. But Colorado just couldn't score. That A&M defense is too much for them. But a 10-7 win for A&M, which forces Zach Calzada into action. A lot of discussion at Auburn that he's not going to be the starter. He might be the third-team quarterback. New Mexico, the next victims as the Aggies win 34-0. And so it's a 3-0 start for A&M, and people are thinking, okay, we're going to be okay. And then they play Arkansas at Jerry World. And this was really kind of a coming-out party. Arkansas to beat Texas, then Texas A&M. Everybody's like, look at Arkansas. Arkansas wins 20-10. And again, Zach Calzada kind of struggled a little bit. But, we get them the next week. We go down to College Station. A lot of people predicted us to lose. I believe I was the only person in the Mississippi State media that picked us to win. We did win 26-22, which made them 3-2 on the year. And a lot of people were ready for Jimbo to be fired. Like, this is it. It's not going to work out. The next week, they beat Alabama 41-38. The big last-second field goal there to win it, to put the game away. Everybody's like, Jimbo called it, and all of a sudden those back-to-back losses, people forgot. They were just 4-2, but then A&M goes on a run. And I really thought Spiller had a chance to carry these guys, potentially to Atlanta, if they could get a little help somewhere. They still had the two SEC losses. The next week, they go to Missouri, and they blast those guys 35-14. They get South Carolina at Kyle Field, beat them 44-14. So now all of a sudden, You look up and the Aggies are 6-2. They didn't control their own destiny, but they were in a situation where they could make some big things happen. They come out of the bye week. They absolutely destroy Auburn 20-3. That A&M defense just did a great job that day. Auburn, was in free fall mode at that point. So they've put some great things together. All they got to do is go to Oxford, win a game up there to stay in contention, and they lose 29-19. And give the Ole Miss defense some credit. They kind of bottled up Spiller and limited the passing game, and Ole Miss wins. It was a big win at the time. A lot of people, including myself, expected A&M to win because Ole Miss was so bad against the run. You thought, hey, Spiller and Achane will run all over these guys, but they didn't. They didn't. The next week they blast Prairie View 52-3, and then they lose at LSU 27-24. Of course, that win for LSU made them bowl eligible. A&M was kind of playing out the string here, eliminated from the SEC West race, but you felt like, hey, they got a chance to go do some good things, and then they canceled their bowl game. Didn't go play it. Mississippi State had the option to cancel their bowl game too. We went and played it. And some of you would suggest, well, we probably shouldn't have played because we knew we were going to lose. That's not a reason to cancel a game. A&M doesn't go play it. They finished the year with an 8-4 regular season. And as great as that Alabama win was, I think in many respects people look at this season as a bit of a disappointment. It's like, yeah, we beat Alabama, but you lose to the Mississippi schools, lose to Arkansas, lose to LSU, and actually tied with Mississippi State in the SEC standings. So A&M, again, good season, not a great season. And considering the pieces they had available to them, quarterback play was a little bit dicey, but you had some good players at the skill position spots. And so we'll see, kind of how this year breaks out. Let's take a look and see, kind of what, of course, quarterback play is interesting, right? I mean, I don't care if it's Pee-wees or the pros. Whoever has a better quarterback usually wins. All right, let's take a quick look. A&M, here's the deal. They still have a lot of skill. Haynes King is a guy, of course, that's still in the mix there. I don't think A&M is named a starter yet. Max Johnson from LSU goes to A&M because it was kind of SEC West quarterback turnover. And then there's Connor Wegman, a guy that's supposed to be a big-time recruit. We'll see how things go there. But I don't know that it's Haynes King. Could be Max Johnson, we'll see. But that's going to be probably one of the biggest decisions they make this year. I mean, you might see multiple quarterbacks in a non-conference. All right, Spiller is gone, thank goodness. Devin Achane, he's back. Like him an awful lot. Then they move him around, right? They move him around and kind of make some things happen. Evan Stewart, highly touted recruit, comes in. Could be the dude for them. There's an offensive line that was kind of young last year. They had some guys that were kind of highly touted that lacked some experience, but should be a group that should be pretty good. Not great. They lose Kenyon Green, absolute stud. We'll kind of see how that progresses. That running attack is going to be the big part of things, take some pressure off that quarterback. They were able to lure defensive coordinator DJ Durkin away from Ole Miss. That Ole Miss staff, as you guys know, a lot of new faces over there. Durkin's headed A&M. Did a good job at Ole Miss. Didn't have a lot of talent available at times. Strung some things together. Got a lot out of that group last year. I don't think anybody could argue against that. So, what happens now, with, this group? They lose Leon O'Neal, good player. Damani Richardson's back. Antonio Johnson's a guy, too, that an All-America type guy. See how things go. I like Tariq Chappell. I thought he played well against us. I know he had some up and down moments later in the year. Long, lean, athletic cornerback. Jalen Jones, another guy. So the secondary should be good. How good's that front going to be? McKinley Jackson, of course, from George County out there, and he's a guy, too, that's been a little bit up and down. But you got to feel like the light's going to turn on for him at some point. Of course, they went out and got Walter Nolan, considered by many to be the number one recruit in the country. So You've got some big bodies down there. Can you put together a cohesive unit? Linebackers a much different deal. And in the way that linebackers are put in conflict in this league because of the fact that so many teams run the spread, that's a very dangerous spot to have some deficiencies. Former Mississippi State recruit Edgerrin Cooper, at the time we thought he was coming here, he's the guy that's going to have a big year for them. And then there's Andre White Jr., who is expected to be a pretty big-time guy. So how does it all play out? Some people think this is a team that will contend in the West. I'm one of them. I don't think they do enough to get to Atlanta. And I think the way the schedule breaks for them, too, that there are some games in there that are kind of sandwiched together. They're going to be difficult. Let's take a quick look at the 2022 schedule for the Aggies. Again, they open with Sam Houston, should be a win. Then they get App State, should be a win. Then they host Miami. That'll be awfully interesting. That'll be an interesting test early on. Miami has always had skill on both offense and defense. Will they have enough to go into Kyle Field and win? It's a toss-up. We tend to favor the home team. As we get closer, we'll pick it. But as we sit here today, I think A&M is probably enough to beat Miami at this point. The next week, they play Arkansas again in Jerry World. I like the game. I know you're basically trading the home game every year for that great experience, but it's a big crowd every year. I like A&M to win the game. Now, we could see them 4-0. We could see them 3-1. We could certainly see them 2-2 when they arrive in Starkville. I don't think State's a good matchup for them. And a lot of it's because of what we mentioned about the linebackers. The secondary should be good, but the intermediate passing game has to be covered by linebackers. We're going to have to run the football against them. Not consistently, but we're going to have to run enough to put those linebackers in conflict, and I think we will. When you go back, I don't know what Miami's going to do offensively at this point, right? But you know what Arkansas is going to do. Arkansas is going to be a run-heavy scheme, and I think that's probably something that favors A&M because I think A&M is going to be really good up front. I think getting them back on their heels against the spread when they decide to go drop 8, drop 7, and last year they got, Elko was there and they got really stubborn and decided to go man-to-man, and we absolutely burned them. Will they do that? Durkin, of course, had some success against State last year, and State did a good job between the 20s, just couldn't finish. They get us compacted down in the red zone. But I like us to win the game. I feel like if I had to pick between the three games, between our State needs to go 2-1 at least against Arkansas, A&M, and Kentucky. I think we'll beat Kentucky, and I feel good about Arkansas. I think the A&M game is a bit of a toss-up, and again, you favored the home team, but I think the fact that we're playing them kind of sandwiched in between that Arkansas game on a neutral site, their first trip away from Kyle Field, the first true road game, of course, will be at our place, and then they go to Alabama. I like where we're positioned. And while they may be 4-0, I think they could be kind of a flimsy 4-0. And you can say, but Steve, the potential to have a couple top 25 wins, that's true. But I think football's about matchups. And I don't know that we're a great matchup for them. The next week they're at Alabama. That's a loss. I don't know if we need to spend a lot of time talking about that. I know that's probably one of the most anticipated games because of all this off-the-field saber rattling. But that's a game that Nick Saban will be ready to get. And I think if Nick can get 70, he will. I don't think they'll leave any doubt. So you got him starting 4-0 and then going 4-2, potentially 3-3. A week off, and they travel to South Carolina. I like them to win at South Carolina, but that game could be awfully interesting too. I don't really consider it a toss-up game, though. I think South Carolina is going to have some difficulty running the football against Texas A&M. The next week, they host Ole Miss. Again, it's a toss-up, so we're going to go with the home team. Florida, a run-first scheme, a quarterback run-first scheme against that front. That could be a real challenge. Napier and those guys, will probably have some things in to kind of boot off that stuff, kind of fake the quarterback run, roll him outside the pocket, kind of make it a 2-on-2 game, put the linebacker in conflict. I think that could be awfully interesting. But I like A&M at home. I just don't have a lot of faith in Florida. I may feel differently when we pick in that game in early November. They go to Auburn. I think that's a win for them too. Late in the year, I think Brian Harsin, I think the posse will already be mounted at that point. They get the UMass Minutemen next. That's a W, and then they host LSU. And so, again, let's run it down real quick here. Sam Houston win, App State win, Miami win, Arkansas win. I got them losing to State. So they're 4-2, and then they beat South Carolina, makes them 5-2. I think they beat Ole Miss to go 6-2. Florida could be awfully interesting. So I've got this team potentially winning 9 or 10 games this year. I think they're very, very competitive. I think they're a team that will ride the running game and defense. Now, I may feel differently as we get into the year, and you say, but Steve, you picked Mississippi State to win. This is a team that could potentially win 10 games. Well, so did NC State and Carolina and Kentucky last year. I just think, again, when you look at the way the schedule kind of works, I love being there as the sandwich game between the first game away from Kyle Field at a raucous environment at Davis Wade Stadium the night after Rock Vegas, and then them going to Alabama the next week. I got to drop them both. All right, so that's how I see it. Maybe you see it differently, but I think this team will probably finish second in the West. Probably. And it's like sometimes I look at all these toss-up games and I can talk myself into thinking they're an 8-4 team. But, I think they get a lot of the toss-ups at home, which favor them. But, this could be a team, too, that you may look up at the end of the year and they're having to beat LSU for bowl eligibility. Because there's some team. What if Florida's better than we expect? Right? And what if Arkansas runs them over? What if Miami's better than we expect? I mean, let's be honest, Miami preseason number 16 is a little bit lofty. But what if Miami offensively catches lightning in the bottle, especially early on in the year? You could be 2-4 headed to South Carolina, and then having a toss-up game against the Gamecocks, Ole Miss, and Florida. So this schedule is very intriguing. The only sure wins I think I look at on here are Sam Houston, App State, and UMass. But I think this team takes a step forward this year. Maybe I'm wrong, because Texas A&M has been difficult to predict. I think we can all agree there. And a lot of it's going to boil down to quarterback play. So we got to go out there and score some points to put these guys away. I don't think there's any question about it. All right, final segment of the show brought to you by our friends at Portico. We've talked about them a lot on this show, and I don't ever want it to get to be old hat, right? I mean, you hear the same ad sometimes show after show. Guys, I'm telling you this. Next time that you're in town, you got some extra time, ride by and see it for yourself. A lot of construction going on here in Starkville. There is. I would want to be closer to campus. That's my needs are met by being closer to campus. Portico is 1.1 miles away from the Mississippi State campus. How amazing is that? And it's tucked in a neighborhood, so you're not right there on 12. Go by and check it out. Be a great place to live. I live out here in the sticks. And trust me, if I was moving to Starkville now, I'd move to Portico. All those years living in neighborhoods in Baton Rouge, I'm like, I want to have some room. Now all these kids are aging out on me. I'll be an empty nester next year, And so it's like I think, it'd be nice to be close to campus, Maybe you feel the way that I do. Reach out to our friend Brooks Bryan at 601-416-8075. Again, that's 601-416-8075. He's got some great Mississippi State baseball stories he can share. But listen, you need to be close by as the next stories unfold. Whether it be your ballgame weekend retreat, perhaps your future retirement home, or maybe your primary residence. A lot of young professionals are thinking, I want to raise a family in the Golden Triangle. I'd love to be able to have my kids go to school right there in Starkville. We got some great schools here. I can tell you this, I've had 3 Starkville High School students live at my house. They've had great experiences. And maybe you want to go to Starkville Christian, Starkville Academy. You've got options here, whatever your needs are. But I can tell you this, I've got one Starkville High School graduate that is now a computer engineer. I've got another one that's about to go to law school and will be a absolute killer litigator. And then I've got a young guy that's about to graduate and went to early college high school for a couple of years, but decided he wanted to run cross country, so transfer back to Starkville High School, and then he'll be going to Mississippi State. We've been very pleased with our experience. But the reality of it is Starkville is a great place to raise a family. It's a great place to live. It's not just about Mississippi State, but it helps an awful lot that you're so close to Mississippi State. Make Portico your next move. Okay, let's talk some recruiting in the time we have left. I wrote an article yesterday. It's been now 12 days since Chris Parson committed to Mississippi State. And I think at that point we could kind of exhale a little bit. I think you look at it and say, okay, all right, now we got our quarterback in place. Okay, now we can kind of go looking for dinner. Well, I don't think you're going to see a big rush of commitments right now. I think now the way things are kind of set up now, a lot of these guys are going to get into the season. They're going to take some game day visits. You're going to take some official visits and decide later in the process. Doesn't mean it's going to be signing day, but I don't think you see a big rush of recruiting activity over the course of the next couple months. Now, that's not to say that you don't have a guy that maybe has been leaning your way, that comes to a ball game and says, you know what, Coach, I'm ready to go. After being around this atmosphere, I'm ready to be a Bulldog. That could happen. But until we start taking those official visits, I don't think you're going to see a lot of activity. Now, we've talked about Santana Fleming a lot on the show. He's talked about taking official visits to Louisville. He's got a visit set up to Auburn, and then we'll come see Mississippi State the weekend of Rock Vegas. How about that? That's a big recruiting weekend. We're going to have a rock show, Also going to have a pretty good ball game that day, too. And so I don't think you see Fleming do anything until after his visits. And there's a lot of discussion that he might take some other ones. And this is a guy, too, that early on, a lot of people thought it was a slam dunk to go to Florida State. And I don't even know if Florida State's even really recruited him that hard before. He's not the biggest guy. He kind of fits what we want. He's kind of like in the same vein as Tulu and Rufus Harvey a little bit. Around 5'10", 5'11", kind of a scatty guy that's, got some quicks, got some good foot speed. I think that's a guy that kind of fits what we want to do at inside receiver. And so, we'll see. And I know Tulu lines up outside. Don't message me. But I think he fits what we want to do, and I think there's a good chance we get him and not put the crystal ball pick in just yet. I understand it's really kind of between us and Auburn. And you look at Auburn's situation, that coaching change could occur this year. It's tough to recruit with that hanging over your head, right? I mean, because trust me, everybody reminds them of that. What are you going to do if they get fired? There's some kids, and mine included, they would have come to Mississippi State regardless, right? Just to wear the uniform, to be a part of it all. They've grown up being a Bulldog, and it's like their dream to be a Bulldog, and no coaching change can change that. But when you're a recruit that doesn't have an emotional investment in a program, and you don't have a connection, perhaps to the school through a family history, the coaching relationships matter most of all. And by and large, relationships truly matter in recruiting. Everybody talks, well, there's NIL, and all that stuff's true. But the reality of it is, at the end of the day, you got to trust the people that are going to be coaching you and molding you and directing you. And that's not always an easy decision for young people to make. I mean, we teach young people to be respecters of authority, right? And maybe it's a little different nowadays, but you understand my point. It's like, you're respecting coaches. You do what your coach asks you to do. Well, you got to be able to trust the coach is doing right by your kid, doing right by the team. And so, again, there are a lot of people out there that, when a coach leaves, all of a sudden, the attraction for that school is removed. So it's important to kind of think about that with Fleming. It's like if Auburn's building a relationship and then those guys get fired in November, is he going to do what Simeon Price did? Is he going to do what Ra did? I mean, that was the situation. Muschamp and those guys have built a great relationship at South Carolina, and all of a sudden Shane Beamer, as great as he is and wonderful guy as he is, it's difficult to rebuild those relationships in such a short time. Well, Steve Spurrier had been out there kind of lurking in the reeds, and he'd love nothing more than to be able to stick it to South Carolina. He goes and snakes both of those guys. And so I think you could see a situation with Fleming that I believe right now Mississippi State is the leader. However, if he did pick Auburn, I don't think that his recruitment would necessarily be over until you get an signing day. And I don't just mean that rhetorically. I'm just saying that there could be some changes in the program for Auburn. That's something to kind of consider too. The problem that he may have is that we may not have a need for a receiver at that point. But Steve Spurrier Jr. always seems to take a receiver late that people maybe have given up on. All right, let's take a quick look at things. As it stands today, we gave a bit of an inventory here a while back about Mississippi State's class and what we expect. Let's kind of run through, how the state rankings look. Ole Miss has picked up some recruits here as of late too, and that's been interesting. It's spurred some discussion here, and I'm gonna address some of that too. I'm not one of those guys that believes that a guy loses value as a player because he goes to a school that perhaps I'm not interested in. Right? That always say, we don't really want him. Listen, I'm going to be honest with you guys. Aiden Williams, we would have loved to have had him be a Bulldog. We would have loved for that to have happened. But he's not. And when I talked to his coach, when I set up his profile, from the very beginning, he said if he stays in state, it's going to be Ole Miss. Got some Ole Miss people around him. Doesn't mean that he's necessarily favoring Ole Miss. He's really looking maybe to go out of state, and LSU was kind of a favorite for him, and I thought ultimately that's where he would go. Now, I don't know if LSU pushed to take him or not. I know South Carolina did. But Aiden Williams is really good. I really like his film. It's unfortunate he's going to Ole Miss, but that guy can play. I don't know that he's the number 2 player in the state. I actually have him probably 4th in my personal rankings, and that's not to say anything bad about the kid. He is without a doubt the best receiver in the state, in my estimation. He just happens to be going to Ole Miss. So because state has not really been a factor in his recruitment, a lot of people have kind of tuned out about his recruitment. Then all of a sudden he announces for Ole Miss and be like, oh, wait a minute. I thought Ole Miss wasn't recruiting well in state. Well, they're not really prioritizing in-state recruiting, but they have gotten some guys that can really play. Of course, Gid Perkins, he's from Raleigh and committed to them early. Alabama could still be on him. We'll see what happens there. And I think Ole Miss is going to have to work to keep him. Again, a great player. Also a guy that was, very closely aligned with some Ole Miss people from the beginning of his recruitment, so they were expected to get him. Dante Moncrief was a hero in Raleigh, and rightfully so. And so a lot of those people say, hey, well, listen, Dante Moncrief went to Ole Miss. He went to the NFL, played for a few years, made some money. You should too. And so you can't discount that. What young people grow up around, right? That's just the reality of life. You think those kids in West Point grow up dreaming of going to Ole Miss? No, they don't. They're around here. They see what Eris Williams has done. They see what some of their classmates and guys that they see, around town have done. Well, if it was good enough for them, it's good enough for me, right? And you say, well, Steve, you don't have him number 2. Who do you have? I've got Isaac Smith, and I go back and forth between Gid Perkins and Isaac Smith as the best player. And I think the best way to describe this is I think Gid Perkins is probably the best athlete in the state. Now, he plays running back at Raleigh, and I was hoping to go see them this weekend, but unfortunately I've got a family event down South Mississippi I've got to attend. And that game is actually being moved to Waynesboro due to all the rain in the area. And so they don't want to play that game in the slop, so that'll make it awfully interesting. So Bay Springs against Raleigh in Wayne County, if you're interested in going to that game. Very generous of the folks at Wayne County to provide their venue. So I think Gid Perkins is the best athlete. I think Isaac Smith is the best true defensive player. Now, I think Gid Perkins eventually becomes a linebacker, but I really like Isaac Smith, and he's a guy, too, we've talked about a lot. Ole Miss not really a factor with him. They were initially. Initially, they were expected to be the pick, and I think now it's very wide open. He's considering Texas A&M. He's considering Georgia, considering Mississippi State. He's taken an official visit to Vanderbilt. Really not much of a mention from Ole Miss. Now, it may be because the guys at Ole Miss just have a different evaluation of him. Maybe they feel like, hey, we need a safety, but we don't need a young safety. We need to go to the portal and get another safety. I don't know their needs. So I don't see that recruitment as an indictment on Isaac Smith's ability or Ole Miss's recruiting prowess. It could be a situation where he just doesn't fit what their needs are this year. But that guy, I think, is a future NFL player. And if that's the case, I think they're making a mistake with him. But, we'll see what happens. Dante Dowdell, of course, ranked 4th in the state. I love this kid's game. I do. And the question mark that I've always had about him is, okay, in that offense, they run that unbalanced line. They get out there and kind of get downhill on you. What about the other aspects of his game? And I've seen some video about him going to some camps. It looks pretty natural catching the football. A lot of people thought he might be a linebacker early on. And I can tell you this, and this is going to make some people unhappy, but I believe he would have committed to Mississippi State very early in this process if we had offered him. We never did. And I think it's a mistake, and I don't mind saying that. I know that there are other people out there that say, well, Steve, I'm not afraid to just kind of give you my opinion. I'm not always going to just go by the company line here. I think Dante Dowdell, whether he is a running back or a linebacker, I would have taken him and figured it out. The guy's a talented athlete. Now he's committed to Oregon. A lot of Ole Miss people expected him to pick them. He didn't. And I remind that to the people that were like, well, hey, Steve, Ole Miss has got some juice as of late. And they have. And to be fair about it, they have. They've got a couple of really good players. Jamarius Brown's a guy we've talked about. He's listed at 6'3", 250, and I just don't think that's accurate. I just don't. I think there are a lot of people in our industry that are offer counters. And so here's the deal, too. I only have to keep up with Mississippi kids and the guys at Mississippi State's recruiting. It's a difficult job for other people that have much bigger territories. But Jamarius Brown is probably closer to 6'1". He is an explosive player. But I just wonder, how well does that translate at the next level? We've got him ranked 5th in the composite. I think that's a little bit high. But he plays a premium position. I mean, they have him listed as an edge. He's not going to be an edge. This kid's going to play inside. I mean, there's no way you're going to play that guy out there on the edge. And if you look at him right now, I mean, he'll be pushing 280, 290 after a couple of years in a college weight room. And he's a big kid, just not real tall. And, interior line play is about leverage, and I think that's one of the things he'll struggle with. I mean, he's kind of in that Benito Jones mold a little bit, but Benito was a little more developed physically, but I think kind of a similar type player. And, Benito, of course, went to Ole Miss and ultimately undrafted, but had a good career up there. I see him kind of in that same vein. Tobias Hinton, of course, the number 6 player in the state, and committed to Mississippi State. And then Brayson Hubbard. And so when you start running this thing down now, you start looking at the in-state top 25. There's only a handful of guys now, and we've got to do some work on the rankings. There's some kids that are ranked in the top 25 that shouldn't be there, and that's not an indictment. It's just a matter of everybody kind of getting caught up. But looking at the premium guys within our state, you've got Caleb Bryant recently decommitted from Utah. He's going to take visits out west, go out to USC, see some other places. I'm told what he is going to do is to enjoy the process, and then ultimately will probably pick a team a little bit closer to home. There are our fans that read this and think, I think he wants to pick everybody but Mississippi State. I don't think that's the case at all. And here's the deal, too. If he does pick somebody else, it's going to be okay. I mean, he's obviously a great player. We love him here to beat Mississippi State. But I don't think this is going to make or break your class. I think he is a guy, number one, that fits what we want to do. And because he is a Vicksburg kid, you want to go get him. I know there's some people up there that are encouraging him to kind of get out and kind of enjoy the process, and he should. But I don't think this is a situation where he has made any decisions to eliminate any of the in-state schools. And I think it's important to understand, too, the day he committed to Utah, I told you guys then, there's no way this sticks. And I don't think he's a guy that will go to USC either. I think in the end, he will pick a southeastern school. Whether it's Mississippi State, that remains to be seen. I don't think that he signs with a West Coast school. And then there's Isaac Smith. We talked about that. So there's only 2 guys in, say, the top 15 that remain undeclared. And then there's some guys that are, between, 15 and 25 that remain undeclared. And some of those guys are not top 25 players in my estimations. We've got to do some work on the rankings. And that's not to say there's going to be a lot of guys move up and achieve 4-star status. And I get a lot of those questions a lot. And I'm going to shoot you straight here. Okay, I don't understand, like Malik Ellis, I don't understand how his ranking has dropped as much as it has. Is he a thinner guy? Yes, but so was Charles Cross. I'm not projecting that he's going to be the same type of player as Charles Cross. I hope that he is. But he hasn't played a college football or high school football game, and he really hadn't been in many camps, and all I've done is since he's committed is seen his ranking drop. I don't understand that. I don't get that aspect of it. I understand if you see him, if you, like, the only people that saw him in camp at Mississippi State were me and Paul Jones, right? And so those are the things that I look at within the industry. There was ESPN didn't have anybody there. Rivals didn't have any evaluators there, but yet all of a sudden his ranking changes. I don't think that he emerges at the end of this process is a 4-star. It's not to say that I don't think he's going to be a great player. I do. I think he's going to be a really good player. But he's he's going to need a redshirt year. He's going to have to get bigger and stronger. It's probably a 2-year project for him. Like once he gets here, got to put on some good weight, learn to play at that weight, and then kind of move forward. Kind of like what you saw with Charles. And I don't know that I would say he is a Charles Cross clone. I wouldn't say that in any respect. But I think you're going to see a similar maturation of a player here where it takes him a little time to get bigger and stronger. Interesting enough, too, some of these other guys, too, that they're a little bit down in the rankings, like Jalen Abram. All right, so he's 16th according to the composite. This kid can really play. I really like his film. My concern is he a cornerback? Is he a safety? I like him as a safety. That's not to say that Mississippi State's corner coach, Darcy McBath, can't win that argument with the rest of the staff. I really like the kid a lot. I don't think he's a 4-star guy, though. I think maybe he elevates a little bit in the rankings. But when I look at some guys ahead of him, I kind of ask myself, what is the intrigue with some of these guys? I think it's a good year in-state. It's not a great year. We had some depth in this class. We don't have a lot of headliners. But a guy that I think is undervalued and again, doesn't have a lot of offers is Jamarius Jones. And I think once some people he's committed to Florida State. I think once some people get out there and see him in person, I think you're going to see some new offers for him. I think that's just a matter of time. I think you want to talk about a guy that could be a high riser in Mississippi during the 2022 high school season. That's him. Quindarius Jones. That's the guy that I would kind of watch to see how things progress this year. Like him a lot. Does he play safety? Does he play receiver? I don't know, but that guy's a football player. Really like him a lot. But I think State's best chance is to see guys move up to 4-star status within the current recruiting class of Chris Parson and Jack Crocker. Because I think, number one, Parson is going to play on a big stage much longer this year. I think Ravenwood has a chance to be a really good team this year. So Chris Parson, I think, could elevate his status. And let's not discount the Elite 11 either, right? I mean, this is a guy that got picked for the Elite 11. So it's not like that he's a guy that's just kind of getting by on his athleticism. And that Elite 11 is a quarterback competition. It's not a track meet. And I think when you look at Joe, I don't know how I get discombobulated sometimes, but I think when you look at the first thing you look at with Joe is you look at his massive size and you look at the film. I think you can get really excited about that. I don't think there's any question. You get excited about that guy. But the reality of it is that again, Joe's not going to play against a lot of competition. But Joe, when you look at Joe's offer sheet, I think when his senior film to make the round, I think we got a case there for him. But I don't think you're going to see a lot of upward mobility with the in-state kids. That's just my honest opinion. As a guy that has tried to objectively evaluate some of these guys. I know, like when a guy goes out and has 100 yards against, a 2A school, people are going to be like, oh, he's underrated, should be a 4-star. I just don't share that same feeling. But I wanted to kind of share that with you guys today. Listen, if you hadn't done so, go to dogpilethebook.com. You can order all my sports books there. I get a lot of questions about that. Where can I get the book? Dogpilethebook.com. And you get Flim Flam, Alpha Dog, Starkville ones all from there. And again, very few Starkville ones available. I told you they didn't even have it at the book festival. They had Alpha Dogs. They had Dogpile. Didn't have any Starkville ones. So if you want to get that book, you need to get it taken care of very, very soon. You're looking for the poetry book, Bloomsville Leander, available through Amazon.com, BarnesandNoble.com, BooksMillion.com, or through your local bookstore. They can order it through Ingram. Also of note, if you're looking for Stark Villains gear, go to StarkVillains.com, and you can order Stark Villain shirts in black and white, maroon and white, or perhaps in your high school colors. How cool is that, especially if you live here in town? I encourage you to go by and check that out. All right, we'll have more updates on Rock Vegas here in the days to come. Look forward to you guys coming and being a part of that. But before we get to that, we got a lot of college football to watch, a lot of college football to see in person as Mississippi State gets ready to take on the University of Memphis here at Davis Wade Stadium. That's it for today. Until next time, let's all live our lives in a way we make more friends than enemies, and people can see a difference in the way we live.